So here we are. We're in Toronto, eh?
We're in Toronto, eh? We are having a wonderful time in the Great White North, eh?
Yeah, yeah. We saw Skyfall in concert.
Don't you know?
Don't you fucking know, eh?
And Skyfall in concert. It is a good time if if you find yourself up here.
Okay. Are you Irish or what? All right, so there you go. There's a little humor to start this off. It's very late. It is 2:00. Well, okay, hold on. Because some people like to critique. It's very early. It is 2:01 a.m. in Toronto.
2:01 a.m.
You're going to hear my wife laughing in the background because we've all had a few pops. Okay, you can laugh in the background, but don't participate, okay? This isn't like a acting in the round thing.
Okay.
Unless you want to join us on camera, which I know you don't.
I know.
Okay. I haven't seen Kyle since Gatherall.
Gatherall.
It's Gatherall. But before
August.
that, I haven't
August.
seen Kyle since just after my wedding. So,
Sure.
our wedding.
Yes.
As in, since Kyle and I are the only ones on camera, our wedding. So, anywho.
The bride is over there. She's off camera, but she's here.
Yeah, she's here. Is she ever here? Oh. Okay, so jokes aside, I see Kyle, I think we could probably say an average of 3 to 4 times a year. Which isn't
that's plenty.
terrible.
No, it's plenty.
Yeah, that's
Plenty.
more than enough. It's more than enough. But I mean, as you can tell, it's like I said, here's the deal. Come into the room for 5 minutes, let's do this video, and then just get the hell out of here. I'm all set. I've seen you since 11 a.m.
He invited me back to his hotel room.
Actually, my wife did.
That's true. His wife,
Which is pretty scary.
His wife invited me back to their
Which
hotel
is
room.
pretty scary.
I think there might be
An argument? Kyle and I are together
we are
tonight.
No, we're not. But continue.
We are in the same city.
We are
next to each other because we went to Skyfall in concert tonight.
We did.
You went to Casino Royale
I did.
last night,
Yes.
as well as Skyfall tonight.
This is correct.
First off, the event itself. I know you've gone before. This is my first time.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was fantastic. That is an incredibly talented group of musicians on stage. What did you think?
It's a brilliant orchestra. The music is spectacular, and I never know where to look. Do I look at the movie? Do I look at the musicians? Do I look at the subtitles? Do I
Mr.
look at the
Heckles off
conductor?
camera said the same thing.
Yeah, that's kind of how it works. And having seen these movies, how many times?
Yeah.
I've probably seen Casino Royale 50 times. I've seen Skyfall probably 20 times. I know when the music is coming, and I know when the music I like is coming, and that's when I would look at the musicians.
When you're watching, because we're who we are with these Bond things, do you notice any difference?
Yes, they do take some creative liberties. There'll be an oboe instead of a flute, or there'll be a synthesizer instead of a guitar. And I kind of like that because it makes it more like you're at a concert as opposed to just watching the movie on DVD.
That's really well said. They are, I would say, 99.9% accurate.
The notes are the same.
Yeah, anything they do inaccurately is completely by choice, but never to the point where you're like, this piece of music has changed completely.
They're not playing different music, but they might arrange it and interpret it a little bit differently.
The one main part I noticed was, I think that the actual piece of music is called Shanghai Drive. So that's like a very electronic piece in the beginning. And they were doing that, I believe, with the electric guitar.
And a little bit more percussion.
Yes. Yep. So I think when he's doing it, it's very like it's to get really nerdy. The only way I can explain it is like the sound waves like very up and down. It's like a very like gradual kind of note. And with the guitar, he kind of just like held the note. And I'm kind of thinking, I think I even turned to my wife and said, this will be an interesting one to hear because it is that beginning piece of that song is very electronic. Like, it is not, I don't think it's any sort of actual percussion or wind instrument. I think it's electronic. So they did that a little differently.
Very familiar with the cue.
Yeah.
And it's not something that you would expect to hear an orchestra perform.
Yeah.
It's computerized.
But I mean, even still, doing it with an electric guitar, like what Kyle was saying, say the note itself is drawn on for 2.5 seconds. Maybe it's not the exact note you hear in the film, but what he is playing is still timed perfectly. You know, so it's like, here's what we can do with what we have, and it still works.
At no point is anything out of sync with the film.
No. So, subtitles. Did they do that because the band can get a little loud, or?
I think they do that because the music can drown out some of the dialogue.
Okay. And they did that in Casino Royale as well.
Yes,
okay.
they turn off the audio track that has the music.
Right.
And you lose some of the sound effects and you lose a little bit of the dialogue. Not much, but a little bit of the dialogue. So they do that in order to make the movie a little bit easier to follow for the audience.
Yeah. So you've seen this before. I know
have.
it was Skyfall. Was Casino Royale part of it too?
No. The only time I had seen one of these films performed in concert was Skyfall, and it was in very early 2020, right before COVID happened. So I keep referring to it as it was the season finale of Society, and then we took a little break and then came back
and
to
here we are,
right.
better than ever, eh?
Correct.
So I know you said it was the same composer.
Yes, same
or
composer, same
conductor,
conductor. Yep.
Was it still equal, better?
It pretty much the same.
Okay.
I don't think one performance was better than the other. I don't know if he had the same musicians, new musicians, or a mix. But that was also several years ago, so it's tough for me to draw a comparison between two orchestral concerts that I've seen, 4 years apart from one another.
I mean, I was very pleased with it.
As was I.
We kind of got there reluctantly, a little late.
Not much.
But this is the thing. Not late enough to where we missed anything.
We were
walked
enjoying
in.
each other's company so much.
Exactly. Each other. Nobody else.
Yeah, no, it was all Brienne.
Just us. And we got actually into the venue on time. But they kind of do the thing where, okay, the show's starting, you're going to have to wait until they're done with the first couple scores or pieces.
Right.
So we did end up waiting until after Adele's intro to go in. But I had gone to the bathroom, and when I was standing in the bathroom, there was two guys talking. And the one guy said, I wonder if they play like the end of Quantum of Solace so you can kind of like go into Skyfall. And first I'm thinking like, why on earth? But then I was like, this is how, and I was sitting there thinking, I was like, but can't you hear the music? This is clearly the beginning of Skyfall.
And I don't find that Skyfall picks up from Quantum of Solace.
But not only that, but
I could go off on a rant about how there's a lot of time that we miss.
Oh, there's absolutely
in between
a lot of time.
Quantum and Skyfall. That's
he loses so much hair in between.
Yes, and
all over his body.
Quantum, he's young, still a rookie, and then by the time Skyfall comes around,
he's an old dog.
I'm too old for this
New
shit.
chicks. We met a couple people. You met a few more than me because you had gone 2 nights in a row.
Yes.
But afterwards, we met up with Dave, Instagram-less Dave.
Instagram-less Dave.
And then Steve.
Steve.
Who does have an Instagram.
Francisco Trevelyan on Instagram.
Francisco Trevelyan.
Give
I think
him a
there's
follow.
an underscore in the middle.
There might be.
A lot of memes.
Type into Francisco and you will find his Instagram account.
2 super nice. Can you, please? 2 super nice guys. 2 very nice dudes.
Bond
we ended up.
There's no people like Bond people.
That's right. Nobody does it better. So we actually went to pre-show and post-show a bar called Scotland Yard, which I think was incredibly apropos. Is that the right word?
I would say.
Did I say it right,
yes,
too?
Yes, you did, yeah.
That is probably the first time I've ever used that word.
Good pronunciation, Luke.
No second
might explain the slurred speech that we've got going on now.
I don't know, am I slurring at all?
The glassy eyes. It might.
Apropos.
Is any of this...
Oh, yeah, there's stuff in there.
All right.
We'll keep going. Earlier in this video, you said there's no people like Bond. I know what you mean by that.
I believe
But
that.
for the viewers, elaborate, please.
I feel like I could go to any major city, and maybe even some secondary cities, and throw up on Instagram, I'm in this town, who's around to have a drink?
Brienne,
And
do you agree? Brienne is basically said we can physically never go anywhere without running into
there's
a Bond
always someone
Yeah.
who's up for it. And not only that, they're cool. Like
Yes.
there's somebody that I have something in common with, and we can start at a level of conversation that's beyond the superfluous.
Yeah.
It's kind of like we can get into a little bit more depth
Yeah.
than if I was just meeting somebody cold for the first time. Plus, I feel like Bond people have a little bit more, what's the right word? A personality, perhaps, or they have a little bit more
He said it, not me.
politeness. We bring something that makes one want to engage with the other person.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, my thing is, and I've said this to my wife, who I think might be asleep. She's not.
She's almost
I've met
asleep.
some of my absolute best friends here, not in Toronto,
In Canada?
but through the Bond community. You ever seen a picture hung so low, like that one?
Yes, that is low.
Yeah. The reason I asked that question is because the two gentlemen that you and I met tonight, Dave and Steve, were standing in the lobby after the show. The show's great. And side note, it kind of completely reinvigorates my love for Bond. That doesn't ever really go away.
Agreed.
But it's like I'm sitting there like, do we have 60 years of Bond to go back and watch?
And
Like,
I was
let's
gonna
do
say
this.
the same thing. I'm almost in the mood. As soon as I get home tomorrow, I'm gonna pop in a Bond.
Oh yeah, I mean it's like a kind of something like this, and you see how incredibly talented the orchestra is. Even watching my wife watch it, she's like, "This is so cool." Blah blah. You know, things like that. It's like I'm sitting there like, I want to go home and like I don't want to talk about who's coming next. I don't want to talk about the end of No Time to Die. I want to
Right.
talk about From Russia with Love. I want to talk about Living Daylights. Let's talk about the older films.
And
Let's
if
talk
you-
about what we already have.
If you heard our conversation tonight, I would say we spent about 10% of it on what's coming next,
Yeah.
and 90% of it discussing From Russia with Love and why it's so good,
Yeah.
or why we prefer. Some of us prefer Living Daylights. Some of us prefer License to Kill,
Yeah.
and why, and getting into those things. That's really the fun
Yeah.
conversation.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like the opposite of like when people say like don't live in the past. It's kind of like with Bond, like there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
because it's
I would
such a
agree.
rich
I would
history.
agree, yeah.
Draw from it,
Celebrate the history.
rewatch, find something new. Like rather than sitting here speculating over and over and over again, which there's nothing wrong with that, but it's like we've done it. There's not,
Right,
and there's no news
And
coming
there's
out. that
no
we can
news.
discuss.
There's nothing to discuss. So why not go back and celebrate
Yeah.
the past? Why not
Yeah.
pick up a book you've never read before, whether it's a novel or a nonfiction book?
Yeah.
Shout out to my friend Dr. Elisa Funnel. But there's
I didn't realize this was a pitch campaign.
there's a lot there. There's a rich 60-year history, 70 years if we're talking literary Bond.
Yeah.
So the question I have for you is, what movie are you gonna put in the DVD player when you get home?
Honestly, that's actually really tough. There's a few we've discussed. I mean, it kind of like with Christmas, especially the last couple of years. Like I've been kind of like, all right, let's watch a ton of Christmas movies and blah blah blah. But
Majesties?
well, not even that. It's like I was telling you guys at dinner.
World's Not Enough. It's a Christmas movie.
Kind of Dr. Christmas Charge.
Right.
But it's kind of like Black Friday growing up. I would go to Target here in the U.S. Well, in the U.S.
Target.
And I would buy older Bond films because they were like $5 on DVD. So I would then by default be watching like Connery or Roger Moore movies in the weeks and days leading up to Christmas. So that kind of like the discussion tonight kind of brought back that memory. So of course I want to go like From Russia with Love or Spy Who Loved Me or Octopussy or something like that. But then I
All
also have not
solid
seen,
choices.
of course,
Great
but I
choices,
also
right?
have not seen The World Is Not Enough in a very, very long time.
Well, that's a sad story.
Yeah. So I kind of want to go see that. You know. So what about you?
I'm in a For Your Eyes Only mood right now. I think that might be the one that I pop in when I get home.
Carol Bouquet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's one of those movies that I think strikes a good balance between fun and serious.
Very wintry.
Yeah,
vibe
it is.
For a while.
Of course, it has all of those winter sports, those wonderful
Hockey,
winter sports scenes.
skiing,
Hockey,
figure
ice skating. Yep.
What would you call the shooting?
That's the biathlon.
Yeah.
So, what did you decide to wear to the concert tonight?
So I've got on. You and I decided to go black tie because we're Bond fans.
We are Bond people, and we were not.
We were
by,
not the only
by a
ones.
long shot, not the
No.
only ones there in black tie.
No, and you know what? I saw 60th anniversary Omega watches. I saw Rolexes. I saw ivory tuxedos.
Seamaster divers.
Oh yeah, a lot of different.
There are a lot
great
of people.
looks.
Again,
Red bottom shoes.
There's
you know what
there's
that's
no people like Bond people. We bring out a little bit of elegance,
little flair.
Yeah.
So it was funny. We went to Scotland Yard beforehand, which is literally just like a British pub, Scottish pub, and dressed like this. So then we went to the show, went back after, and the girl's like, "Oh, welcome back." Why do you think she recognized us?
Because we made a good impression.
We're not in there wearing Toronto Maple Leafs jerseys, eh?
And I do love when you've finished with your event for the evening, whatever it is, whether it's a black tie gala, a fundraiser, a wedding, and you go to that bar, that diner, that pizzeria in your tuxedo.
Oh yeah, it is. A fun.
I love that moment.
Reminds me of prom.
I've always loved that moment.
You know, Giorgio Armani suede loafers. I have on a velvet dinner jacket from Banana Republicu. I am wearing Neiman Marcus tuxedo pants, Turnbull ivory French cuff shirt, Turnbull Casino Royale bow tie that I also wore when I was at our wedding, and the Planet Ocean, our wedding. I'm not talking to anybody else.
Right.
The Planet Ocean from the pre-title sequence of Skyfall, and my wedding ring.
Good for you, man.
What do you have on?
Way to name that.
Ew. And the Spectre cufflinks.
It's all about the details. So I wore a Charles Turret midnight blue dinner suit, much like the one from Casino Royale. I'm sorry, not Casino Royale, from Skyfall. Casino Royale was last night.
Are you drunk?
I'm drunk. I have on Crockett and Jones derby shoes. I have on my London Sock Exchange.
I also have London
as
Sock
do you.
Exchange. Excusez-moi.
Yeah.
Voulez-vous? Ça va, ça va?
We're wearing London Sock Exchange socks.
Big fan.
Terminal and Astor Casino Royale shirt and tie. Union Jack cufflinks for Skyfall. Skyfall Aquaterra.
What made you wear the Union Jack?
I think there's a lot of. Well, that's true. I did.
Did a little birdie tell you?
This may have been prearranged, pre-coordinated. As Bond fans do, we discuss what we're going to wear beforehand, and Luke gave me some cufflink tips. I wore the Algerian Love Knot cufflinks last night.
Yeah,
and the Union Jacks tonight.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a lot of.
It's just a little subtle nods.
Yes, and there's a lot of British imagery in Skyfall. The Union Jack draped coffins towards the beginning of the film. There's a lot of like English patriotism to that film. So Union Jack cufflinks were the way to go. Even though I'm an American and we're in Canada.
The English Bulldog too.
The English Bulldog, yeah, Jack. Luke, what's your favorite scene in Skyfall?
Ooh, that's actually a good question. Actually, you know what? I actually know the answer, I believe. And I'm pretty sure I turned to my wife and told her this. I love when M recites Tennyson.
Oh, yeah.
The score is fantastic.
That is a good scene.
The energy's building so well. And then I kind of almost regret this, but I always get so lost in that scene that even tonight I kind of like halfway through was like, wait a minute. They're playing this live. Like maybe I should watch.
Yes. And the orchestra built that up to such a crescendo.
Fantastic. They do the crescendos and the decrescendos incredibly well.
Yes.
Incredibly well. What about you?
That's a good pick. My favorite scene in the whole movie is the epilogue of the movie when Bond finally walks into M's office, the traditional M's office with the leather door that we remember from the Connery and the Moore films, and he gets that file, and then the Bond theme starts to build up and build up and build up. Gun barrel, and then Bond theme.
So it's funny you picked that because that scene actually has a bit of... I have a bit of an issue with it now. Moneypenny says, I'm sure we'll have a few close shaves, but now 2 movies later he dies.
Well,
and I just kind of harken back to the history of it and think of how many they actually do have.
True.
And then it's like you reinvent it, you reintroduce, and it's only 2 films later. And he's
good point.
No more.
And the fact that they were on an operation together and he didn't know, at the very least, her first name is circumspect. But that's getting nitpicky. I love the Taggarts so much.
We love you.
They're my favorite people.
So this might be a bit of a cheat, but what is your favorite piece of music from the film?
Oh, that's a good question. Probably the cue that you mentioned, Tennyson. I think
that's mine too. I've always liked Shanghai Drive, it's called.
Yeah.
I like Adrenaline, which I believe follows Shanghai.
It does, and then it plays over the end credits also.
Yes.
Which they did not play tonight. They just played a rendition of the Bond theme, which
also
was
awesome.
Spectacular.
It is really cool. It's really cool.
Every time I go to these performances, I wish the orchestra would keep playing. Like, play Thunderball now. Play Nobody Does It Better.
Yeah.
Like, I want to hear another hour of your music because it's that good.
It's to hear the Bond theme live is one thing because I've never heard it live. I don't know where I would have. To hear that guitar lick live is another thing, but then to be in a room full of, what do you think, 3,000 people?
Yeah. People? And it was a full house.
Oh yeah,
packed house.
Absolutely packed.
Both nights, not an empty seat in the joint.
To get the standing O and everything, it's just like it's like a heartwarming, like, I love seeing like all these people, like you see people every age, dressed every way.
Yep.
People you wouldn't expect to be there, people you would expect, like all different walks of life, all here to see Bond. To me, that's awesome.
And some are here because they're like you and me, where they're diehard James Bond fans.
Yep.
Some people are here because it's just a night out that's local.
Yep.
Some people are just movie people. Some people are just music fans.
Yeah.
So Bond brings together people from all different walks of life.
Yeah. The one thing I will say, probably the last piece for me, looking back on tonight, was I've never been in a Bond film, and don't get me wrong, all of them have their sprinkle of
I've never
humor.
been in a Bond film either.
Oh, yeah, well, I've never, starred. I've been like 3rd or 4th on the call sheet, but I've never been watching a Bond film. Would you hold that for something? The one thing I want to say, I think, last to reflect on tonight, which I thought was incredibly interesting, I've never been watching a Bond film, theater in particular, where and they all have their sprinkle of comedic moments and whatever else you may say, but there was like 20 times where you've got like the whole audience laughing. I've never seen it. It's like
you should have seen it last night because
I
feel like Casino had even more laughter and a lot more audience
like cheering and
it was a lot more interactive.
That's crazy to me.
People were clapping, myself included, at a lot of the one-liners. And anytime Bond had a victory, it was like, he beat Demetrius, he beat Le Chiffre, bravo.
Old-timey kind of stuff.
That's the fun of seeing a Bond movie in a theater, and that's why I love the theater experience so much.
Yeah, I mean, the one gentleman that we met during intermission said, I was at Casino Royale last night, which you, of course, were at as well. Said it was a lot more audience participation, however you want to say it. And then after we came back and went in for the second half of the film, then all of a sudden
started to engage.
Everyone's laughing.
I feel like that might have been because the three of us had that conversation and we tried to get a little bit more.
I mean, even when she said, "My name's Eve Moneypenny," you got a round of applause.
Yep. Or when the Aston Martin shows up in the storage
Yes.
locker, that got a good.
Yeah, and then there's the orchestra's playing the quick little Bond theme there.
Yep.
Laughing when he says he's gonna eject M.
But that's
little things.
That's the fun about seeing a Bond film in a communal setting with a packed house full of, whether they're film fans, Bond fans, or music fans.
Yeah.
Fans who are there for no other reason than to watch this movie.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the other thing I heard too, I guess this will be my last nugget of information, but as we're walking out, because you're like, if you go see a Bond film in a normal theater, you know, it's mid-November, new Bond film's out, there's what, 100 people in there? This is 40 times the amount of people. So when you're walking out, your face, you know, like crammed in, like packed like sardines. You can hear what people are saying, and everyone's like, "Oh, I love this scene. I love this car. She was so good in the film. He was so." It's like you don't hear that either. Just like at your typical movie theater, seeing really most films.
It's true.
So it's like you're surrounded by people that just wanted a good night at the movies.
People were there specifically to see James Bond.
Yeah,
and that's what makes these events so special.
That's where we wrap this up. Well said.
Yep.
Thank you guys for watching. Kyle friggin' Barbeau. Easy smiles, expensive watches. I love you.
Love you too.
Always a pleasure.
Likewise.
Always a pleasure.
Likewise.
Give us a little Roger Moore.
Well, Scar, my good.
See you in the next one.